All right, my friends, if you're anything like me, you've probably spent a lot of time focusing on the tactics of productivity, like doing Pomodoros, or putting your phone on Do Not Disturb, or hiding it so it's out of sight, out of mind. But one thing that I did not pay enough attention to, and I'm only realizing this in the last year or two, which is a little bit embarrassing to say, honestly, is the ergonomics, the way your body feels, the lack of aches and pains, because I've had right wrist pain since I was in college. And I kept thinking that it was due to like my weight training, my wrist just, maybe my technique was off or whatever, because it got exacerbated by bench press. Turns out it was due to repetitive strain. And I didn't realize that until a year or two ago when I saw a PT finally, because it was getting worse and worse. And same thing with my lower back pain. So deadlifting in college, going way too ham, getting too aggressive with the weight progression, and wasn't as strict with my form back then, and my right SI joint got injured. I have spent some time and a lot of experimentation trying different products and different routines, etc., to figure out what works. And I've realized that, surprise, surprise, when my body feels good, it's a lot easier to focus, get work done, and just feel better day to day, not have these aches and pains. So now that I'm 32, I'm placing an even greater emphasis on this because I'm noticing, when I get injured, I don't bounce back quite as quickly. So here's what I've learned after countless hours of experimentation and buying different products and all that stuff. These are the 8 or so products that have benefited me the most, and I hope you find them useful as well. So let's dive in. All right, first up is Minimalist Shoes. I know this one is actually surprising because I thought these were super weird. People had those like, those Vibrams, those shoes with like each individual toe. And I thought they were so strange and for weirdos. I haven't gone that extreme, but now I do wear minimalist shoes. And by the way, links to this and all the items discussed are down in the description as always. Now, if you've heard of the kinetic chain as it relates to body movement, the idea that the movement in one part of the body is intertwined and linked to other parts of the body, you won't be surprised to hear that if you have foot issues, you might have back pain as a result of those foot issues and vice versa. Now, I've had terrible plantar fasciitis on my right foot. I'm a little bit flat-footed on the right side since, I wanna say like college or med school is when it started bothering me. And I started rolling on a lacrosse ball or similar balls, and it felt good. I'm doing that self-myofascial release, that self-massage, releasing some of the tension there, but it was still always lingering and I'd have to do it every single day. And it wasn't until a few years ago when I actually bought my first pair of minimal shoes, the things just clicked and fell into place. So the idea is that with modern shoes, we have two problems. Number one is that there's too much cushioning, such that the intrinsic muscles of your feet, they can't actually work and strengthen over time. So your arch gets weaker by having too much support, too much cushioning. The second part is that the toe box is too narrow. So now your feet, your toes wanna spread out and grip the earth with more distance, more stability, kind of claw the ground. And the shoes, modern shoes, force our toes together. That's actually a large reason why people develop bunions as well. I got minimalist shoes that give you a wider toe box for more expansion and less cushioning so that your feet can actually, the muscles can stay active and strengthen. And by using these, it has completely changed my foot issues. I've tried out Groundies, which I got from Amazon for a very reasonable price. I like them, but the toe box is a little bit still cramped for me, so I don't wear them too often. There's also Zero Shoes, which is a popular brand. I think they're kind of fugly, so I haven't tried them. And Vivo Barefoot is actually the one I go to most often. I now have, I think 5 or 6 pairs. Bought them with my own money. They haven't sponsored me. And I think they look good, they are comfortable, they fit me well, and they have different styles. So I have like my hiking ones, I got my more formal ones, my less formal ones, my gym shoes, etc. So I recommend Vivo Barefoot. Although I will say they are a little bit pricey. Next, your actual workspace. So I've put a lot of time and effort into standing versus sitting desks, and we even have some popular videos both on this channel, but originally on Med School Insiders, going over the research, the literature, diving deep, what is better. Long story short, standing is better than sitting, but ideally you want to incorporate more movement. Standing is gonna make it easier to incorporate movement because it's hard for us to just stand still for hours on end, whereas we can sit for hours on end without much movement. So standing is better than sitting, but what's even better is incorporating further movement. So not just standing or sitting, but getting on the ground, sitting on different things, and we'll get into that shortly. But backtracking a little bit, I first wanna talk about ergonomics because that is one issue that I was facing with my wrist. Turns out the wrist issues I faced were from having too much extension and using a trackpad like this with a lot of extension and doing that again and again and again, day after day, and doing this in college and med school and so on, it just added up and I was getting more and more wrist issues and tightness in my forearm. So what's helped, number one is stretching and strengthening, which I think is the foundation for most of these issues. And I have this awesome forearm massager, which we'll talk about more later. But also, more importantly, focusing on ergonomics. So I'm trying to minimize or reduce the usage of a trackpad while I'm at my laptop. And now when I'm at the desktop, I'm using 3 different mice. I got the MX Master from Logitech, which is super common, super popular. I'm sure you've seen that before. Maybe you even use it. I also have the MX Vertical that has my hand in a more supinated position. So it's not fully pronated, it's more neutral like this. And then finally, ProtoArc has this awesome uniball mouse where you're not actually moving your wrist around to move the cursor, you're using your thumb and using that ball to move the cursor around. So I use all 3 in rotation. If I feel any aches or pains or discomfort in the wrist, I can just swap between those mice. Problem solved. And then the second thing is the keyboard. Now, most keyboards force us to abduct our wrist sideways and type like this, which is not natural. Obviously, I'm exaggerating it here. But what you want to do is neutral. Neutrality is really the key when it comes to ergonomics. So you want to sit neutral spine, neutral position. You want to have your hands also in a more neutral position where they're in line with your wrists. And your wrist, you're not like this, right? You're more relaxed in this setting. So your keyboard actually needs a little bit of a curvature to it. It needs that more ergonomic shape and even a little bit of elevation towards the middle. So you're more, not quite supinated, but in a more neutral position and not so deeply pronated. And here I found ProtoArc's Bluetooth ergonomic keyboard to fit the bill. It's got this padded wrist rest, I'm at a more neutral position, and it's got that backlight, so even in the night, I can still see the letters and keys if I need. We've actually partnered up with ProtoArc, so big thanks to them for supporting the channel. And if you want to try it out yourself, which I do suggest because they are built at an affordable price point, which is very reasonable for students, then visit the link in the description. All right, so going back to standing desk, I bought an IKEA desktop, tabletop just like this, and I put a motorized base that I got from Amazon for like $200 something. Very affordable setup, and with the touch of a button, it goes from sitting to standing to sitting again. Only thing I don't like is that I should have gotten a larger desktop because it's a little bit small. So I'll be changing the whole office actually, which will be coming out in a future video, so make sure you are subscribed. But the key thing here is make sure your desk is motorized, because if you have one of those manual crank ones, there's more friction to manually cranking something and setting it to the right height versus just pressing a button and being done with it, or even having it automatically move positions for you so that you are forced to then stand, right? And if you are manually cranking it, there's a little bit too much friction. You're gonna find yourself sitting way more than you intend. So my recommendation is definitely have a motorized sit-stand desk. If you're really crunched for budget, and again, this is like a $300 setup, maybe $350, the tabletop and the motorized base, then you can always do a fixed standing desk setup, which is what I had, the old IKEA jerker desk. And that one you're kind of forced to stand, and you can then get a stool if you want, but that's for those who are a little bit more budget strapped. All right, so now you have your motorized sit-stand desk, which is awesome. The next question is the chair. Now we're used to these standard office chairs, which are very comfortable, especially for extended periods of time, but you'll actually find you'll have more aches and pains if you're always sitting in an office chair versus if you do what I suggest, which is actually switch it up throughout the day. All right, so first up is the Air chair. Now, thanks to Venn Design for sending this my way. Again, links to everything down in the description. The Air chair is essentially an exercise ball that has a nicer outer padding and cushioning to it. So there are a couple benefits here. 2 main things. Number 1, since it's a sphere, you're encouraging more movement. You're not gonna just sit in place because it kind of wants to roll around a little bit. So you're gonna start rocking and moving in circles and things like that. That is incorporating a lot more movement. And remember, we said it's not about sitting or standing, it's about incorporating movement. The second thing, no backrest. So with no backrest, you have to incorporate more of your core. So again, you're getting more of that movement, that activation of various muscles. You're gonna feel a lot better. You're gonna have less back pain, or at least that's the experience that I had. Next up is the desk treadmill. Now, I admit, I used to think desk treadmills were pretty dumb and kind of overkill and just a fad. But now that I've tried one, and thanks to Deer Run for sending me an awesome product here and for partnering with me on this video, I have changed my mind. So a couple things you have to keep in mind. A desk treadmill is a nice way to incorporate some low intensity, constant movement to your work. You're not gonna get some proper zone 2 training. That was my initial thought. I was like, okay, cool, I'm gonna put it on an incline and have it fast enough where I'm gonna get zone 2. It's too distracting, because if you go, if I go all the way up to 4 miles an hour while I'm walking, there's a lot of vertical motion with each step, and then you're exerting yourself more such that you can't quite focus to the same degree. If you start off at a really low speed, like 0.6 miles an hour, it's almost unnatural when you're taking one step at a time, and it's not like a natural pace, so you almost need to think more to walk slower. What I found to be the most effective is right around 1 to 1.2 miles an hour. It's a natural pace, I'm walking, and it just falls into the background. And now I can actually focus and do the work that I want to do, which is handling emails, writing scripts, working on the business, Medical Insiders, et cetera, et cetera. So I do think there's a sweet spot here where if you go too slow or too fast, at least based on my experience, concentration and your overall productivity will suffer. But if you find that sweet spot, it's actually great. And if you are struggling to get more steps in per day, then this is a very easy way to just almost passively and automatically get more steps in. Next up is a stationary bike. I haven't used a desk bike where you're like reclined and you have a little station for your laptop or whatever. I've used either a Wahoo Kicker Core where I put my actual road bike on it and I have a little table in front, and I use the Carol bike. Now I've tried working at both, but because you're more in a bent over proper cycling position, you're not as upright or as reclined, it's harder to do a lot of the work that would require more like, typing or trackpad or mouse input, things like that. So what I found best is I will actually do a lot of meetings while I'm on the bike. So people can see that I'm clearly on a bike, which is why I'm not gonna be doing it with certain meetings, but with like certain internal team meetings, it's not as much of a problem. And I do feel like I'm killing two birds with one stone because I'm doing my zone 2 training while also getting a meeting in. But I can have more like conversational meetings. I can't really do the whole like typing, working on emails personally when I'm doing zone 2 on a bike. Next up is the sitting cushion. Now I don't use this at my desk. I use the sitting cushion usually when I'm in the living room and I wanna just change up where I'm working. I'm getting tired of being in the office. So I'll grab my laptop, I'll sit by the coffee table, and I'll sit on a sitting cushion. Now, why do you need a sitting cushion? It elevates your bum, so now you don't need as much mobility and flexibility in your hips. And if you're not a super flexible gymnast or whatever, you can still sit for extended periods of time comfortably using a sitting cushion. You can also sit on it in different positions, so you're incorporating that movement, you're activating different parts of your body, and overall you're gonna feel a lot better versus, again, just sitting in a chair all the time. And the last final category are just miscellaneous, various massagers, mobility tools, etc., things that I've found helpful just to play around while I'm at the desk working or just between sessions. So number one is gonna be various spheres and balls like lacrosse ball, the rubs ball, which is small and has these nubs on it, which feels really, really good on the feet and on the hands and the forearms. I have this awesome forearm massager, which brings me so much relief. I love this little thing. Oh, going back to the balls, you can also use them when you're at the standing or sitting desk and you can just roll your feet on them, which is how I actually use them most commonly. There's also the peanut, which it looks like two lacrosse balls connected together, peanut. And I like to use that on my paraspinal muscles, up and down. And then of course, some yoga blocks as I'm doing different stretches, or if I'm sitting at the living room and I wanna, get into different positions, I have my sitting cushion, I got my yoga blocks, and that just kind of adds a little bit more optionality to the different positions. As always, links to everything are down in the description. Big thanks to ProtoArc and Deer Run for partnering with me on this video. Let me know what you guys have found the most helpful with a comment down below. Much love, my friends, and I'll see you guys in the next one.